So I found Eat to Live in March of 2013, and a friend of mine had introduced me to the lifestyle. I bought the book, and in one weekend, just a few days, I devoured that entire book. I put like this big, huge comforter inside of a non-working jacuzzi in the rental that my dad and I lived in at the time, and I just read that whole book cover to cover. I had an instant feeling, and I've heard this from so many people since, that they had the same feeling, that this was it, right? This was the lifestyle that I was going to be following. I also had an instant feeling that it was going to take me about 3 years to perfect. Sure enough, it was about 3 or 4 years before I really got comfortable with variety and all that. And I say that because in the beginning, I only found like 1 or 2 recipes, and they worked so well for weight loss that I was terrified of trying anything else. And so I lost a bunch of weight in the beginning. It also was a very tumultuous time in my life. I found that lifestyle in March of 2013, and my father had been diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer, just a month or two before. And if you guys, by the way, hear any noises sometimes, I got kids, I got cats, I have things that will be making noises every once in a while, and you might have just heard Vincent jump off the desk, but we're going to just pretend like these things don't happen as we go, okay? So anyways, I had a bunch of things going on. My father was dying of cancer. He was to die just 10 months later. And I had just gotten divorced about 6 months before, and, lots of things going on in my life. And Eat to Live sort of gave me hope. It gave me something to hold on to, sink my teeth into literally during that time period. As my father's life was sort of slipping away, it was the thing that I could control. It was the thing I could hold on to. I ended up losing 22 pounds in 6 weeks. It was wonderful results, and I just knew this was it, but I also knew it was going to take a while to perfect. And then, of course, like I've heard in so many other people's stories as well, something happened, life happened, right? So you start this lifestyle, you get some really amazing momentum and success in the beginning, and then life hits you again. And so the topic of this particular podcast, this first podcast I wanted to record for you, is why you can't stick to the Eat to Live lifestyle. Because I know a thing or two about why folks, and myself particularly, cannot stick to it consistently. And so I have created an entire career out of helping folks stick to Eat to Live. So stick with me, and I'm going to tell you more about my journey and also how you can create more consistency in your journey as well. You're doing just Eat to Live, or you're doing just basic healthy eating. You don't even have to be 100% nutritarian to learn some stuff from what I'm going to tell you in this podcast. So stick around. I'll tell you all my secrets as we go. Hi, I'm Cheri Alberts, and this is the Watering Mouth Podcast, and I'm going to teach you to eat to live, lose the weight, and love the process for good. Episode 1. Woohoo! Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here. You have actually no idea how long I've been wanting to do a podcast. It has been, I think I heard about doing podcasts, a long time ago, but then I actually considered doing a podcast in around 2013, 2012, when I first started my website. So that was a long time ago, but I really didn't feel like I had much to contribute, or I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about yet. And now here we are. What is it, like 8 years later, something like that I am ready to give you as much information as I can about what I know, which is the Eat to Live lifestyle, and how to stick to it. So let's sort of set the tone for this podcast in general. Now, I am Cheri Alberts. I'm a certified life and weight coach from the Life Coach School. I'm also an expert nutritarian. I have been coaching folks on how to eat nutritarian, how to lose weight, how to stay consistent for years and years and years. And this is my passion. This is my life's work. It has turned into a wonderful business that I love, that I can help people. And I want to tell you all about that as we go. But first things first, just want to let you know, I am a wife. I'm a mother of 3. I have 2 young twins. They just turned 1. I have a toddler who's about to turn 4. And I have 2 really annoying, bratty cats. And I'm telling you this to get to know me a little bit more, but also just so you know, as I said before, there's probably not going to be some perfection on this podcast. And just so you know, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm also planning on always recording a video of me speaking as well every time I do one of these podcasts. So you might be watching this on YouTube right now, but if you're just watching the podcast, know that there's a video along with every podcast that I do that I'm publishing on YouTube every other week or whenever my publishing schedule is. So if you ever want to watch the video of me, but know that the video is not perfect either. Like right now, it is 9:45 at night and the lighting is terrible, but I just wanted to be able to, and also I realize that I work best on video. This is my, method of delivery for teaching. And so when I actually tried to record this podcast, just audio only, it felt way too awkward for me because I'm so used to talking on video. So I'm going to try to have a video every time. So you can look out on YouTube for that, or you can just listen on the podcast app, whatever podcast app that you use. So let's get into it. All right. So that's my little introduction here. Let's just talk a little bit about what Eat to Live is. So Eat to Live, if you don't know, is a very healthy eating lifestyle by Dr. Joel Fuhrman from his book, Eat to Live, which I believe came out in the early 2000s, and then there was a reprint in 2011. It is my favorite book. It changed my entire life. It's what everything I talk about is all about. And it is a healthy, whole foods, high nutrient, plant-based, mostly plant-based lifestyle. And you can find all the information in his books. He has so many books, Dr. Fuhrman, and his most recent book is called Eat for Life, and that is sort of the updated version of all of this. So you can learn everything you need to know in that book, or you can start with Eat to Live or any other of his books. They will give you everything you need to know. So Eat to Live is I sort of consider it as this end of the spectrum, kind of therapeutic end of healthy eating. And so when you consider that, you sort of think, okay, maybe I don't want to be perfect. Maybe I don't want to have all of that under control. Maybe I just want to eat healthier than where I am right now. That's totally fine, right? Especially to listen to this podcast, you don't have to be perfect on any of this. I'm going to give you information about Eat to Live, which I do feel is that kind of end of the spectrum, the sort of the best diet on the planet. You can do whatever version of that you are comfortable with. I have coached so many private clients on whatever version of that healthy diet they're looking for. So feel free to make whatever you like, that kind of, lifestyle that you want to follow, but I'm going to tell you how to do it. Any version of that, I will help you with that. Okay. So why you can't stick to Eat to Live. Now, as I mentioned before, I have some experience with why I can't stick to it. And I know that my experiences are very similar to a lot of folks in my audience as well. So that's what this entire podcast is about, is why you can't stick to it and how you can actually. So I'm going to give you all my secrets, all my tools as we go, but just understand that you're not alone, first of all, okay? You are not alone. There are so many of us who are doing the same exact thing out here in our homes, working to make this lifestyle as healthy as possible and to feel our best and to, do the things that Eat to Live says, which is reverse and prevent diseases, better digestion, repair things, and just feel our healthiest selves as well as longevity, right? Of course, I'm just going to make the disclaimer that anything I say, this is all, my information, but I am not a medical professional, okay? So there's my little disclaimer. So do everything with your doctor's advice, okay? So why you can't stick with it? First of all, I did mention that I'm a life coach, right? And I have been coaching this lifestyle for several years now, since 2017. So it's been 4 years now. That's crazy. And I have taken on dozens of private clients, and I have hundreds of not private clients, but group clients currently in my Eat to Live family membership, which is a group coaching membership. And I have coached thousands and thousands of people on my YouTube channel and, my email and my social media and all that. I've coached so many people on this lifestyle. So I do have some pretty specialized knowledge in this field. And I do have quite an interesting perspective on why you can't stick to it and why you can't stay consistent. And first of all, I want to tell you that it is not your outside circumstances that are causing that. So for instance, it's not the fact that your husband doesn't eat this way. It's not the fact that your kids don't eat this way. It's not the fact fact that you have always been a binge eater, perhaps like me, or a food hoarder, perhaps like me, or, always had troubles with your weight or done so many yo-yo diets or anything like that. It's none of those things. Those are not the reasons why you can't stick to Eat to Live, okay? It's not your programming. It's not your social programming. It's not the ads you see on TV, right? It is not outside circumstances. It's not the fact that your, Aunt Norma just died, or, we went through a global pandemic, or just had a baby, or anything like that. That's not the reason that we don't stick to Eat to Live. The reason that we do not stick to Eat to Live, there's only one reason, and it's actually our mindset. And what do I mean when I say mindset? You're going to hear me use this term a lot. I am a life coach, certified from the life coach school. So these are the methods that we learn in there. And I'm going to be telling you so much about these, giving you these very specific tools. And one of the very specific tools that we use is called the model. And this was created by Brooke Castillo. She's the founder of the life coach school. And, when I say created by Brooke Castillo, she created this framework, but what I'm about to teach you and the framework and the tools that I'm going to be using in the future to explain all of this to you, it's stuff that we've known for a long time. Thousands and thousands of years about humanity and the way that humanity works, the way that our brains work and how we create results and things like that. It's all stuff that we've known for a long time, but the framework that I'm going to use that Brooke created, which is called the model, is a very specific way of looking at it. And it helps us kind of look at it in a very, practical sort of way, so that when we're looking at our life and our circumstances and going, I'm having so much trouble, whatever, why am I having trouble? This is the way that we can figure out why we're having trouble. So just stick with me on this one. I'm going to explain it a lot more as we go. But the general concept here is that it is our mindset. And when I say mindset, I mean actually our thoughts. Actually mean the thoughts in our head are creating our results. They are actually the thing that is creating our weight, right? The weight on the scale, the number on the scale. They are creating our choices with food, everything that we're eating during the day or not eating during the day, as it were. Our thoughts are what is creating all that. I'm going to give you a little bit more information as we go here, so hold on one sec. But if it's our mindset and our thoughts that create all of our issues with food, that's the bad news. But guess what? The good news is that we have the power to change it, right? That means that we don't have to rely on something outside of us in order to create that change. That is the best news in the world, because that means that the more we practice it, the better we get at it, the better we're going to be able to use these techniques. And the fun part about what I'm going to teach you on this podcast and in all my other videos and everything is that if it's your mindset and it's your thoughts that are controlling everything, this is a technique that will work for weight and food, but guess what? It works for everything else in our lives too. All of the struggles that we have in our life and all, it can all be worked on and worked out using these techniques. So that's really fun. Now, the general idea here is that, and I was talking about this model, part of this model is that our thoughts create our feelings. Okay. Now, if you've never heard this concept before, it might be a little tough to understand in the beginning, but I just want you to go with what I say, okay? And just maybe suspend your disbelief about some things and maybe just go with what I'm saying. You don't have to believe it yet, but just start to look for evidence of this in your own life. And then that way, I'm going to constantly be like flicking the cat to get her to stop like licking her and purring and things while we're on this podcast. But anyways, okay, you will see that on the YouTube video if you want to see that, but just go with what I'm about to tell you and look for the evidence that this might be true and see how this might actually be playing out in your life and how you might use it to your advantage to improve things, right? So the idea is that our thoughts create our feelings, but then the other important part is that our feelings create our actions. So thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions. Now, this is actually a very common model. It's not just Brooke's model. It's actually the cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy model. It's been talked about in so many self-help books and, all these different places. This is a very common type of model that we use. Now, Brooke expands it a bit, so we're going to be talking about that in the future as well. But the basic concept, our thoughts create our feelings create our actions. Now, we've talked about this idea of actions, and what I mean actions, if you put a a set of actions together over and over and over again, do the same actions over and over again, it becomes a habit, okay? So you can look at actions as habits, actually. So if our thoughts, and another way we can think about thoughts is beliefs as well. So our thoughts create, or our beliefs create our feelings and emotions, and our feelings and emotions create our habits and actions. Then what we say is that the sum of our habits and actions equals our results. So if our results on the scale are that we weigh more than we would like to, it just goes to say that if our thoughts create our feelings, feelings create actions, actions create results. If we want different results, all we have to do is change our thoughts, right? Now, that's interesting and exciting, because if we want different results, it's all in our mind. It's all in our head. All we have to do is change our thoughts. But this is where it gets tricky, because everyone always ends up saying, okay, well then how do I change my thoughts? Right? That's the first question. And I hear that on every single private coaching call I ever do with anyone. There's always that moment of, oh, I can see that I'm thinking this now. How do I change it? How do I get out of that pain? How do I change that? That's what we're really going to be focusing on in this podcast as we go. So stick with me. But the first thing that we can do in order to change our results and to get to that place where we can change our thoughts is, number one, we need to be aware. We have to have awareness of even what we're thinking anyways. Now, in my experience with coaching private clients in the past, a lot of the issues that we have, or the struggles or the behaviors that we have created, have become subconscious or unconscious, right? They've been sort of relegated to that place in the brain where we don't even think about it anymore. And that's why we can end up, at the bottom of a bag of Doritos before we even notice it, right? We can end up at the bottom of, a bag of Oreos before we even notice it. That's because our actions have become so habitual. They have become so habitual that they just turn subconscious and we don't even notice that anymore. Like me, for example, I would notice a pattern of mine several years ago that every time I would have to send out an email for the website, or I would have to send out an important email or do some type of an important task for work, I would be halfway to the kitchen before I would even notice I was walking to the kitchen, because I just had a habit of, oh, this is scary. This is hard. I don't want to do this right now. I'm going to go get a snack, take a break. I need a break, right? I need to get out of this pain. And this kind of behavior, once you repeat this so many times, it just becomes automatic. It becomes something that you just do without even thinking. And this is why weight loss can be so mystical to so many folks. It feels like something they just don't understand. They can't possibly figure it out. It doesn't make any sense. I don't even notice when I'm having these binges or these overeats or whatever. I don't even notice it. So how could I change it if I don't notice it? We don't even notice the extent to which we're doing things. So for instance, we might be having a nice meal for lunch, and then we realize we're having a piece of fruit. And then after that, we realize we've made another, thing of pasta or something like that. And after that, we notice we're, looking for some chocolate or whatever, some kind of a dessert. And then just a couple hours later, we're thinking about more food again. And it just kind of keeps going on in the cycle, but we don't even think about it. We don't even notice it. And here's the thing, if we don't notice it, we can't change it. Okay. So that's the big concept that I want to show you, is that, I give you this model: thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions, actions create results. But if we don't even notice what the actions are, how can we even work through any of the other things? Okay. So the first step that we have to work on is our awareness of what we're doing. So number one, the awareness of our habits, the actions we were talking about, our awareness of our results even. So this is a really good one too. I always like to talk about this. It's like when we're starting off on a healthy eating journey, some of us don't even like to weigh ourselves anymore. So we have no idea where we are on the scale. We have no idea where we are compared to where we used to be, kind of a thing. It's like not checking our bank account balance ever, right? So let's say, your paychecks are coming in, whatever, and someday, one day you get one of those overdraft fees and you're like, how could this happen? Well, if you haven't been checking your bank account balance, it's really easy to know how it could happen, right? Because we're not even paying attention. And when we're doing the same thing with our health or with our weight loss, things get away from us. We do a lot of subconscious, unconscious type of actions, and then we don't even realize how far we've taken things until we see a picture of ourselves and we can't believe we look like that. Or we see a video of ourselves and we can't believe we let it get that far. Because when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror all the time, every day, seeing ourselves, we're used to how we look. And it's not until we see a photo that's sort of out of context for our brain that we can truly see it. Of course, the camera adds a little bit maybe, right? But we can truly see kind of how far things have gone. And so it really does come down to awareness. Just as if you were going to start to get your finances in order, you would first need to know what your balances are, right? So you even know where your journey is headed, where you're going. And so that's the first tip that I want to give you. We're going to dive into this so much more as we go, but why we can't stick to the Eat to Live lifestyle is because of our mindset. It's because of our thoughts, because we haven't even been checking our results, right? We haven't even been checking in fully with the actions that we're taking. So we don't even notice when we're eating that whole bag of Doritos plus this, plus that, plus this, plus that. We don't even notice how often we're doing it. We're not even aware, right? We're definitely not aware of our feelings. And if our feelings are creating our actions, then that is a really important piece of the puzzle to be really understanding. And feelings, I'll just give you a spoiler alert, are the most important part of this whole equation almost. Well, all the pieces are really important, but we'll get into why each one is so important as well. And then if we're not even in touch with our feelings, then how can we be in touch with our thoughts that create those feelings? And it's fun because when I see a client, when I first start talking to a client and they're like, I've never even thought of that before. I didn't realize that my thoughts were connected to my feelings. I never even understood how my emotions came up. I thought they just came up, right? When we start actually looking at all of these pieces, that's when we really start to get that clarity, that mental clarity that starts to allow us to change. And that's actually one of the most important things to keep in mind. And I'm going to be repeating this so many times so you understand this very important concept is that first is awareness. And it's actually the awareness of the situation that creates change. So as I was telling you before with these clients who come to me and say, oh, but how do I change my thought then, right? How do I change my thought? Well, that's not it. We don't just change our thought. What we actually do is become aware of the entire situation that's happening. And once we see everything for what it is, that's when we start to automatically change. It's this idea that, if you're in enough pain, you will change, right? So when we can see the situation for what it really is instead of numbing out somehow, that's when we actually start to create that change. Okay, so step number one is that awareness. We have to understand where our thoughts and feelings and actions and results even come from, and then just being so aware of that process as it unfolds for us day by day. When we're so aware of that process, that's when we start to make these changes. And that's when we can start to deliberately choose the thoughts that we're having. Okay. So to recap, why we cannot stick to the Eat to Live lifestyle or any healthy eating lifestyle or our exercise program or our budget or, right, insert anything here. There's so many different, this applies to everything in our life, but why we can't stick to it, why we can't stay consistent is because of our thoughts, because our thoughts are creating these stories. And I'm going to give you an example here to sort of tie this up for you so you can see how this works in my life or has worked in my life. And then maybe you can see how it works in yours as well. So for me, we say thoughts create feelings actions. Now, for me, my story had always been several years ago, and you can even see this on my YouTube channel. I have blogged and vlogged for years, all of these things. Why can't I stop binging? Why can't I stop overeating? Why can't I lose the weight? All that. You'll see that all on my YouTube channel. I've done, vlogs every day for over 200 days at one point back in 2016, 2017. You can see all those videos on my YouTube channel. Now, my thought, so thoughts create feelings, feelings create actions. My thought was always when I walked into the kitchen, I got to the fridge, my thought, if there was anything like carby in there, like prepared pasta or prepared oatmeal, or maybe there was some bread in there, whatever, I would notice that food and then my brain would go, ooh, you got to have some. And if you have some, you're not going to be able to stop eating it. Like you will eat the whole thing. You're going to devour it. It's going to be amazing. You're going to love it, but you're definitely not going to be able to stop eating it. So that was always my story. Every time I looked in the fridge, that thought would create a feeling of, now, what does that create? Disempowerment. It creates urge, craving, desire. It creates a lot of really strong feelings that are hard to overcome, right? Because when you're having that very strong craving to eat something and you're looking at it in the fridge and your brain is telling you you'll never be able to stop eating the whole thing, you know what then happens? You eat it and you eat the whole thing, right? So for me, that meant massive quantities of oatmeal that I had prepared for a week in advance, right? Or it meant an entire loaf of bread or half a loaf of bread, whatever I could fit physically in my stomach at that moment. I would just eat piece after piece after piece of toast, with whatever. And that was my story. So look at how that works. My thoughts about how I was going to binge and how I wouldn't be able to stop binging until I had eaten, to the point of just literally not being able to eat anymore. It wasn't about having a sensible meal. It was about just eating and eating and eating, right? My thoughts about that created my feelings. My feelings were like disempowerment. They were like humiliation, disgust, shame, craving, desire, and then powerlessness, right? Those were my feelings when I opened the fridge. Every time I would see a food like that, that's how I felt. And when you feel that way, when you think about those kinds of feelings, what do? You overeat, right? You overeat. You don't plan your meals. You don't do all the things create those kind of healthy actions. And then when you do that enough, you get a set of results. And the set of results for me was always either constantly gaining weight, right? Slowly but surely, scale keeps creeping up, or it's this back and forth yo-yo all the time of just being totally out of control. So that's a little description of how thoughts can create feelings, feelings create actions, and actions can create results. And that's how it worked in my life. And when we're super aware of this, we can start to make those changes. Okay. So that is the podcast for today. I am so excited to start telling you more and more and more of this information so that you can gain this empowerment back in your own life. You can gain your own power back. And I say back very importantly, because you had this power before. You had this power to have this self-discipline, to have this self-love, to have this overwhelming sense of self-worth. You had all of that stuff when you were a little kid in the very beginning, right? Or when you were a baby. When you first started out, you didn't have, when you were just born, you didn't have ideas that society put in your head during your childhood or during your teenage years or during, your 20s or and onward. You didn't have anything sort of clouding your judgment about how amazing you are. And you are amazing. And I'm going to tell you all the time about that. And I'm going to tell you how you can feel that inside of your own heart too. So that's the journey we're going on. The journey we're going on is to, as I said, remember I said something about feelings earlier. We are going to improve our feelings so that we can eat better, right? Because notice, every time we have negative feelings, that's when we tend to not eat so well. So that's what we're going to be working on doing, is having our thoughts create these amazing feelings. And when we have amazing feelings, we're going to make amazing choices. We're going to create amazing results. And we are going to do this all together, okay? So thank you so much for listening to this first podcast from The Watering Mouth. I hope you share this with your friends. I hope you loved it so much. Let me know in the comment section somewhere if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you are, you can go to my website, thewateringmouth.com, and comment there as well on the episode page for this as well. We're always going to have show notes too when appropriate. So if you ever want to find content, look in the show notes of the podcast or in the YouTube video, etc. Again, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and I can't wait to see you in the next podcast. Hey, did you love what we talked about today? Consider helping the Watering Mouth podcast grow by subscribing, and you can be sure to never miss an episode. And also, if you take a moment of your time to leave me a review, it would be so helpful in showing the podcast algorithm that this show is useful and super awesome. That way, others who may be looking for the same answers as you can find me just like you did. Thank you so much in advance for subscribing and for your review. Okay, that's it for now. See you soon. Bye.